Good evening, mate. You all right?
Not so bad. Not so bad. I think we managed to. Currently, at the time of recording, we don't seem to have any bad comments with life-threatening comments going on at all about the way that we dissed Charles Dickens last week.
I was worried that he might come for us, but then I realised he's been dead 100 years. So
it was. What worried me was we shared it, and somebody actually posted, "Oh, I'm looking forward to this. It's one of my favourite stories." I thought, "Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
but yeah." The key thing to remember is opinions are like arseholes, and everybody's got one, and most people stink.
Yes.
And all we're doing is sharing our opinions. Yeah,
exactly.
So before we start, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, tell your friends, take screenshots of us.
Absolutely. With 29 subscribers at time of recording, which means listen to the end of this. Because I will make it all the way to the end. Don't just use the porn bloody bar at the bottom for skipping to the important bits. I'm going to give away 5 copies. I'm going to give away Kindle copies of the book. This is genuine, worth money things that we're giving away this time. So it's so do stick around to the end, and hopefully by the end of this conversation, we will have thought of a way that you can claim a free Kindle book from myself. Yes. Well, we would have figured something out by then, I'm certain.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. So, Ash, what have we been reading this week?
We have been reading a short story by Charlotte Riddell. Charlotte Riddell, as I'm sure you know, was born in 1832 in County Antrim, Northern Ireland. After she married, she moved to London, where she lived most of her life and died in Ashford in Kent in 1906. Riddell was a very prolific novelist and well known in the Victorian period. She actually owned and ran a literary magazine in the second half of the 19th century. So The Open Door is what we're reading, and The Open Door is considered a classic Victorian ghost story. Theophilus, a clerk, hears that his employer is willing to pay a sovereign to anyone who can help with a supernatural problem. There's a house in the country that has a door that won't shut. The clerk offers to close the door for 10 quid. The clerk's boss immediately sacks him for being greedy. The clerk then goes to the boss's boss, offers his services, and the boss's boss takes him up on the offer. Phil gets to the house, goes around closing every door, and finds there's one door that once he's closed it and turned his back on it, it immediately opens again. We're introduced to various characters and backstory. Apparently the door stays open because a murder was committed in that room. The house's owner was just in the process of rewriting his will, bequeathing some of his money to a friendly local lord in the village instead of giving all of it to the young gold digger he'd recently married, when someone crept into the room and stabbed him in the neck. The will is still being disputed as this story goes on. So the clerk finds evidence that this is not supernatural because he finds a hair grip and some water on his gun. That's not a euphemism. He's also poisoned, but a doctor cures him with relative ease. Then, after a late-night vigil outside the room looking for unexpected visitors, the clerk ends up in a fight with a visiting ninja maid, who is possibly or probably the maid of the widow, Mrs. Golddigger, who lives in a neighbouring building. Clerk is shot, Mrs. Golddigger and the maid do a runner, and friendly lord house owner helps the unemployed clerk to become his own boss, working on the land. Is that the same one that you read?
That's definitely the same one that I read. And can I just say, Ninja Maid and the Gold Digger sounds like the title of a fantastic series of stories.
It does, doesn't it? Now that I think about it, yeah.
Ninja Maid and the Gold Digger. I think that's fantastic. They're my new favourite superheroes.
What did you think to it?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Yeah, I thought the writing style was brilliant, and the way that it kind of kept you thinking about what was going on with a complete Scooby-Doo ending, I just thought was fabulous.
And I've got to say that the whole notion of it being a Scooby-Doo ending, one of my worries was when I got to the end of it, because this is a story that I hadn't read before we'd started. I was thinking, Colin's going to bollock me here because this isn't horror. It's not supernatural, because it just turns out. I mean, I'm not even sure what the hell had happened at the end of it.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a supernatural thing. We'll come to that actually.
Yeah.
There is elements of supernatural, but it was the pacing of it. I was thinking, oh, I reckon Ash's going to hate this because, again, female writer, Victorian female writer, lots of realism, and there was some really minute detail stuff going on. But
it was just so beautifully done. I mean, when the story starts off, you've got, is he called Phil Theophilus, the clerk? He is, isn't he? Yeah.
Oh God, when I remembered, his mate called him Sandy.
Sandy, yes. Hence your name on the screen. Well, yeah, Sandy.
Exactly.
So let's call him Sandy. So Sandy is thinking quite reasonably, if they're willing to pay a sovereign or 2 sovereigns to get this house so that it's no longer haunted, in that case, why won't they pay a tenner? Which seems perfectly reasonable to me. And his boss just straight out fires him for being uppity.
Yeah,
and it's just a case of, you twat.
It felt so of its time as well when that happened. You know, that was really good. But one of the things I really liked about it is this whole thing we keep talking about in writing, which is character. I know we moaned about it last week as the lack of character. And this week, I thought, you know, being told in the first person, the way that she wrote the kind of irrational thinking behind thinking he should be a tenner, maybe even 20. You know, it was really kind of like, we've all been there and done that kind of, you know, when you kind of go for a job interview and you come out thinking, oh, that's all right. You know, I don't want to get my hopes up. And then by the time you've got the other end of the bus journey, you're like, oh, it's nailed on that. I've got that job. In fact, actually, they're going to give me twice the money that's advertised, you know, and you're like that. And then you get the phone call saying that, no, you know, you haven't even succeeded. But you get these kind of, these sort of delusions of grandeur going on, and she got that. She nailed that absolutely perfectly, because I really did feel like this is a young guy who's really thinking, you know, and going a bit mad with his thoughts.
Yeah, I thought absolutely the characterization was absolutely spot on, especially for the main stuff. I thought his wife Patty, or girlfriend Patty, was a little bit two-dimensional and a little bit of a caricature, in that she's just so perfect. But that's all she needed to be. If we look at what Forster says about flat characters and rounded characters, in that case, yes, Sandy is a fully rounded character, and his wife, well, his fiancée, who is not an integral part of the story.
No, I'd say Ash, you know, be honest, right? I'd really like to know what was in that first letter she sent him, though, wouldn't you?
I was hoping the first letter was laminated so that he could sort of like wipe it clean and then read it again. Yeah,
because seriously, he does. You know, she doesn't say what's in that letter, but the allusions to it are like, yeah. This would, Oh, I'm not telling you what's in this letter, but bloody
but
hell, I was wanking whilst I write this.
I absolutely love this one. Even though I'm still not 100% sure what's happened at the end, because towards the end, well, sorry, you were going to say about supernatural stuff that's there. Well, supernatural stuff is really there.
Well, the door does open on its own. He actually walks to the other end of the hall and the door opens on its own. So there's something pointing to that room. It's almost like, and what I really liked about it is it's not complete communication, the idea of the ghost. It's kind of like, look, somebody keeps going in this room because this has happened. You need to hang around here to see what's going on, to catch the culprit. So it wasn't you're going to see the ghost, but there was definitely ghostly help in the investigation.
Yeah, I mean, there's one point where he decides to wedge the door open, so he puts a gimlet there, which is which should be the emblem for the Tory party, because it's a boring tool. So he screws a gimlet into the floor to wedge the door open. And the next morning when he comes down, the gimlet's actually broken, as though the door has been supernaturally pushed over it. And whereas if it was just down to the ninja maid, I'm sure she would have worked out to sort of like unscrew it and remove it.
Ninja Maid would have been, Ninja Maid had not been spotted by this point, you know. I mean,
yeah,
there is the question of had Ninja Maid been, you know, hiding in the room and opening the door to make people scared so they wouldn't be in the house, so she gets time to just look around. But that didn't really come across for me. I thought it was, the door was definitely opening. There was something dodgy going on that people were just not investigating. It did seem to take an age for him to find that. You know, it took Ninja Maid's been searching this office for months and not finding the will, and then as soon as he's gone, oh, it's definitely in that room, and then they found it. You know, so it was a little bit tied up quickly, but.
I can forgive it. It did so many things right that I can forgive the occasional thing like that. It's like when you watch Buffy, and I know we've both been back to Buffy in the last couple of years, and they do so many things right in an episode of Buffy that you can forgive the occasional crap special effect, like the werewolf suit, which just looked like a hairy onesie.
Yeah.
But the scripting and the dialogue and everything else is just so on form that you just think, yeah, well, I can suspend my disbelief a little bit whilst that goes on. I
agree with you completely. I think by the time you get to the end, and like you say, it is a little confusing because there is a ghostly apparition at the end as well. You know, there is this kind of like, I don't think it says it, but it's almost like in the lightning, isn't it? Sort of like lit up in the lightning in the doorway. You know, that kind of just takes Ninja Maid's attention long enough to, you know, to be able to get out of the kerfuffle that they're in. But you're so invested in the character at that point and the mystery and the way that it all plays together. It really is. You start buying into everything that's going on when you meet the other characters, even though they are flat characters and they are only there to serve a purpose to increase the mystery of it. Even the callous bloody boss who then says, "Oh, he's released me of my contract. You can, you know, here's your money. You don't have to do anymore." And he still wants to stay on because, and you want him to stay on at that point because you want to know. It writes the mystery so well that you are desperate to know what's going on by the end of it.
Yeah, no, I was incredibly impressed with this one. I like the Maid. I like the one of the pieces that I liked that I thought was good scene setting was when he meets the Lord's, he meets Beatrice, who's riding on a horse called Toddy, and they come over, and it's just sort of like a nice. She's a nice, sweet 15-year-old girl, and there's nothing dodgy going on, honestly.
No.
Nice, sweet 15-year-old girl who wants to stand on her horse. That's not a euphemism, just so that he can look into a window that he's not been able to get access to. And then Riddell takes us on this brief discursive point where we get told that in the future, the woman's now married, and she meets up with the hero of the story just to tell him that the horse has died.
Yeah.
And it's just, right. So what we've got a dead horse, which is a sad thing, and we've got people crying about it, but we know that these characters are going to be alive and surviving in the future.
Yeah.
It's a lovely piece of just, it just works so well.
It's one of those things about telling story in the first person, isn't it? That it's very difficult to do. You can remove the tension. So like take Anne Rice, Interview with the Vampire, for example.
Yeah.
Is, you know, a lot of that I absolutely adore. I think it's great. But for me, it just never had any tension because you knew he was all right because he's telling the story. So it didn't really grab me. What Charlotte's been able to do in this is actually still have the tension because it's not about whether he dies or not. That's not where the mystery lies. So you're not worried about whether he dies after getting shot because that's, you know, it's right at the end of the story. It doesn't matter at that point. The tension build it is a perfect example of how to write a first-person story. Without a doubt, it's how you create the tension without it having to be life-threatening to the character that is telling the story. Really, really masterful at doing that.
Yeah, it is. You described it as Scooby-Doo
Yes.
before, because
He would have got away with it. Ninja Maid would have got away with it too. You know, if it wasn't for this pesky 22-year-old, or sorry, 20 plus 2 years, as he describes himself. You know, just out on the take.
yeah, and it was that. It was sort of like all mystery and spookiness with very little supernatural, but enough supernatural just to make you think, ooh. Yeah. I mean, it's not one that's going to make you sleep with the lights on.
No, no. It's not terrifying
in that way.
It's not terrifying.
It was neat and unsettling. It was great characterization. It was really, really well paced. And yeah, I've listened to it about 3 or 4 times, and each time I've got to the end, I've sort of like had to go back, as in, I'm sure I've missed something here. You know, this has just been tied up far too effortlessly and quickly.
No, but I find a lot of the Victorian stories do that, actually. They do tie things up very quickly, you know. So, yeah, I didn't find it odd in the way that it did it. Because, I mean, the Mezzotint, when we read the Mezzotint, that did the same sort of thing. You know, so that, you know, I think that's just a style thing that Stephen King took on, I think. Because he's, you know, and then he did, because I think Stephen King's the classic, isn't it? If Stephen King tied everything up quickly and then didn't do the preamble afterwards, then they would end like Victorian stories, but without that bit at the end that seems to turn them into bad endings, you know. But you know, because everything does get tied up very quickly. Yeah,
no, and the whole thing absolutely worked for me. What was I going to say? I was going to say,
actually, what's your thinking about what you? Oh no, have you remembered?
I've remembered. Yeah, I was going to say I love the description of the fight scene. And there's an awful lot of writers that screw fight scenes over, that they're not very effectively done. But this is a fight scene which is doing a lot of very, very brave things. First of all, we've got our male hero who's 22 and quite capable of taking care of himself, fighting. And we've been calling her Ninja Maid, but that's just because
she's dressed in black and she's a maid, and she's really good at fighting.
Yeah, but for its time, somebody actually having a physical confrontation with somebody of the opposite sex, it was not something that we get to see very often, unless it's sort of like being portrayed as spousal abuse.
Yes.
Here it's the hero beating up or trying to beat up the smaller,
getting beaten up by.
Yeah, and she steals his gun, she shoots at him, she throws the gun at him, then finally manages to put a bullet in him. She's very, very effective at fighting. And the whole fight scene was, edge of the seat stuff, really, you know. Yeah. What's going to happen? Who's going to win here? Yeah. Loved that bit. Sorry.
And it took me by surprise. I really wasn't expecting that to happen. I think it's you're kind of thinking, oh yes, it has all the elements of a great Gothic ghost story. You know, it's got the big house, it's got the lonely corridors, it's got the door that won't stay shut. You know, and everything about that, and other people telling you of the mysterious story that's already happened in the house. Everything about it's leading up to it. To then actually have a physical person that he manages to wrestle. I was like, oh wow, you know, it really did take me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, I thought that was just such a lovely touch to it. Yeah. Sorry, you were going to say before.
I was going to say something. One of the things, as I was reading it, because as you know, I do the read and the listen. Yeah. Because I find I get so much more out of it. It reminded me of something. There was a particular point, not the whole thing, but there was a particular point when when Sandy first goes to the house, that reminded me of a piece of your work.
Right.
And it reminded me of of when, I can't remember his name, you will, because it's your characters, in Dollhouse.
Ben.
When the writer, Ben,
first
goes to the house in the village.
Right.
And he's having his first night there, and he's got like the woman comes and fixes them up some food, and just that general feeling of wandering around a house. It reminded me of that. So, you know, I thought it was really, yeah.
Thank you. I'm delighted to have my work compared to something of this caliber, because honestly, why have I never heard of Charlotte Riddell before?
Yeah,
what sort of cave have I been listening in?
Bloody loads. You know, I mean, she is like the ghost queen of hundreds of ghost stories.
Wow. Yeah. And yeah, I must have been living in a cave or under a rock or something. But yeah, she's currently my new favourite. And yeah, I'm going to have to do something with her. As you say, it got all those features. So we've got sort of like a Dracula's castle of a house that's in the middle of nowhere. We've got somebody being isolated. And yeah, and again, the main thing was you just were supporting this guy so much. He's just asked quite reasonably, you know, well, if you're willing to give a couple of sovereigns, why not a tenner for getting this house so that it's back on the market, which is a reasonable thing to ask. And yeah, you're there like supporting him, thinking, you need to fuck over these bosses. What the hell is wrong with these people? And yeah,
I love it when he goes to the other office and he's having the row with the staff because he's there going, I'm not leaving here till I see him. And well, you can't see him. So, well, I'm waiting here. Well, you can't wait here. Well, I'm waiting in the bloody street then. It was just like, I've seen that argument so many times. It was again, like I say, it's the realism of the time, you know, in that style of writing. She did it very, very well compared to the nurse's story, the old nurse's story, Elizabeth Gaskell, which they have very, very comparative themes at the beginning in that, you know, and still very, very good writing. But you could see where Charlotte Riddell had managed to kind of create this entertaining character that pulled along all the realism. Where in Elizabeth Gaskell's, the woman, the nursemaid, wasn't entertaining as a character. So that's why it kind of dragged a little bit in what she was doing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, with this guy, he gets given his marching orders by the boss, who says you're owed however much months notice in salary, and gives him the money that he's owed. And he says, well, no, I've not worked for this part, so you can have that back. Which is such a stupidly heroic moron thing to do. It would be a case nowadays, if it was me, it would be a case of, well, I want a little bit more than that, actually. Hand over whatever. I'm taking that stapler or something. You would want to screw them over.
This plant's mine.
And this is my keyboard that I... but he does something that's so stupidly noble and self-sacrificing like that. And then, as you say, he has the ridiculous argument of, well, I'll wait here. All right, well, I'll wait outside. Which, again, makes him such a rounded, three-dimensional, enjoyable character.
And his dad, who says, have you got £3, son? Because, we're a bit in debt.
Yeah.
You know, so that makes him even more determined to get the tenner out of him. And then you got his uncle sitting there going, don't do it. Don't go for whatever money. You know, if this bell end wants you to go and do it, it's dangerous. So don't do it.
Yeah. And his uncle is such a wonderful twat. He's so honest, but honest not necessarily in a good way. So there's that part where he's saying, are you going to sort of like support this guy? Would you recommend him to work for me? And the uncle's there saying, well, not if it involves adding up lists of numbers. He's just come from a job as a clerk. I mean, you bastard. Yeah.
What do you mean you've been fired? Oh, bloody hell,
Yeah. Absolutely loved this one. It's just, it's the way writing should be. It was a story that took me out of myself. It was a story that kept me wrapped all the way through. And it was unputdownable.
I also think, now we've read a few of them as well, that the twist at the end of it being a real person. I mean, I don't know, because we haven't read everything that was published 100 years ago yet. We intend to. But do you think that she maybe looked at other stuff that people were writing and gone, I'll do a twist on the end of that, like Alice Scream or the original Friday the 13th, for example, where you kind of, the setup is there and then you twist in it. Because it was just a wonderful twist.
Yeah, I think you could very well be right. It's instead of it being ghosts or instead of it being supernatural or something, in that case, he's fighting a real person. Which
but still, what was in the doorway? Who was in the doorway? You know, it still had that little bit of a mystery about it.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. Yeah. And yeah, that's the annoying thing, isn't it? This was so good that all that I've got to say is praise. Yeah,
exactly.
There's no parts where I'm. Yeah, we need another Dickens story, don't we? So we can shit on him from a great height.
Well, we're gonna do a bit more Dickens, but I mean, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, we've now actually had 2 weeks in a row. Actually, no, hang on. Was Pigeons before that? I can't remember what order we've done things in now. But basically, where we've agreed quite a bit. With the ones where we haven't agreed, we normally kind of come around to some sort of consensus. But, particularly with Pigeons from Hell, with the Signal Man, with Charles Dickens, and with this one, I think they are instantly love or hateable. I think.
Yeah,
and the Dickens ones, I know we're going back to it, but it was the implication of it because the writing skill was there.
Yeah,
but like this one showed, and I think I enjoyed this one even more because of Dickens. I think that's where a lot of it came from. In that it was just nice to go back to someone who was handling character correctly. And that was it. I mean, say even though we've had our differences with like the Demon Lover and all that kind of stuff, I still think the characters were handled very, very well. And even in Elizabeth Gaskell, I think by the end of it, the characters were great. The way that they all came together, particularly the old ladies, there were certain elements of it. It was just the lead up to it.
Characters all had relevance in those stories. Yeah.
That
was my issue with the Signalman, because you just sort of like got a bloke turning up, standing next to the Signalman, maybe tugging him off, maybe picking his pocket. We don't know what the hell he's doing.
Trying to get some favors, definitely.
Whereas with this one, Riddell, she knows how to tell a story and she knows how to treat her audience. And I think that's what Dickens had overlooked with that last one. He didn't know how to treat his audience.
Like I say, it was that kind of phoned in a little bit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But this one, no, like you say, you can't help but be. I'm going to go back and listen to it again tonight, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's one of those. But right? And here's the thing. Okay, because we talk about the creative side of things. Unlike with, when we had The Door in the Wall, which we both rather enjoyed, and then you could kind of see how that would adapt, and I'm doing something with that. With this one, at no point did I think, oh, this really needs to be adapted into into a film or something like that. It's almost like it's in its perfect genre. It's in its perfect medium. Yeah,
it is, isn't it? It's in the right time frame. The way the characters are treated. Your first thought when he sort of like gets sacked is, you should go to the fucking union there. And then you sort of like think to yourself, there probably wasn't one back then.
Go and see Dickens.
Yes. So, you're absolutely right. It was just sort of like perfect in the way that it was, in the time frame that it was for, the way that it was presented. Everything about it was absolutely spot on. It was just, it's just such a work of art.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm definitely going to dip back into her at some point in the future. And that's just reminded me of who I want to pick for my next author, which I know it's not my turn, but I just remembered
and actually, as we were doing this, you know what? I actually forgot to think about what we're going to be reading next. So I've been trying to do it surreptitiously, but unfortunately, I have absolutely no way of being able to talk to you straight here and be able to look. I'm not a millennial. I can't look at my phone and up here at the same time. So I was just going. I've got in my head one that I think we should read, and I'm just trying to find who the author is, which is rather annoying. So Phil in.
Yeah. This is a copy of Blood Ink. Yeah. Have you bought your copy of Blood Ink yet? By the amazing Colin Dave, 5 stars on Amazon. Yeah.
Which reminds me, that is the books I'm giving away. I have Kindle copies. I have 5 Kindle copies of Blood Ink with a monetary value of £1.99, and it does have to be in the UK. They only work in the UK, these codes, unfortunately. So all you people are not in the UK, I do apologise. I didn't realise that when I bought the codes. So 5 codes to the Kindle copy, and you go on. It's free. It actually says it's prepaid. Download it, and you get to read Blood Ink for free. £1.99 is what I'm giving each of you. Look at that.
Wow.
Yeah. Don't you? I tell you what, you don't get that on Stephen King's podcast.
No, you don't. No.
So, and
also you know how to walk without getting run over. Although, right. Now, have we actually looked at Bram Stoker before?
Yeah, we did. We did Dracula's Guest.
All right. Yes. Yeah, I think that was 2nd week, maybe 3rd. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we are going to go back over things because I know that the one that I wanted to look at, because it's one I haven't read, and I've been seeing it come up on the lists. Okay, and we have tackled this author before, with more his novella, but it's Robert Louis Stevenson. I want to go back to. Thoroughly enjoyed the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but I want to read The Body Snatcher.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and because I've never read it, keeps coming up on the lists. It seems like something that seems to be a miss in my reading, like The Open Door. Well, I haven't read that before. I knew of it, but I didn't know the full story. Again, it was just one of those things that had been in a number of different things, but I had never read that one before. So I thought, well, no, I've been curious about this one for weeks, and I've been trying to not go back to the same author again, because we need to go back to M.R. James at some point as well, because there's a couple of his that I want to return to. But so The Body Snatcher by Robert Louis Stevenson is what I want to read this week. Body Snatcher.
Brilliant stuff. I'm looking forward to that one.
So, what am I going to do? I think, I know we've given out a couple of copies of the short story. That one's still out there. If you send a message to Books by Ash Lister,
I will wang out a copy.
He will then wang out a copy. I haven't picked up on any of the ones that you've done all the way through, all the innuendos that have gone through to tonight's thing. I've been trying to stay away from them. We have been told off for it before, so I've been trying not to. I'm trying to be good. And all that kind of that you want to get into Charlotte a bit more. I've just tried to ignore them.
You've been bending over backwards, yeah.
And I had listened to 24 minutes of Lionel Blair jokes from Sorry I Haven't a Clue this week. So I've had a massive fill of innuendo this week. I'm filled to the brim.
Oh. Because we lost Lionel Blair this week, and it's
been another sad week. So we'll do one of those one week where we'll just do a memorial of all the authors that have died 100 years ago. That are no longer with us.
So how are we giving away? What have people?
So I'm going to say I think we should do Books by Colin Davis this time.
Right.
So that's my Facebook page, is the Books by Colin Davis. If you go there, right, there's 5 to give away, and I think there's a little bit first come first serve on it, but I want to make you work a little bit harder for it. So I would like you to name an old Victorian ghost story that we haven't read yet. So come to my Facebook page, send me the title and author of an old Victorian ghost story that we haven't read yet, and I will send you a copy of Blood Ink on Kindle, completely free of charge. 5 to give away. First 5 stories that come in get the books. How's that?
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. And honest to God, it is absolutely brilliant book. well worth dipping into. Yeah, awful lot of fun. There is some,
Got my copy over here as well. I noticed actually on the last one, you know the way that does little video previews on YouTube?
Yeah.
The last time we were waving that book around and it picked that as the little video. It's just us two waving the book like this.
Should I hold it there like that, hoping this comes up as,
Which is really good. I should have a copy of Doll's House, but I've got the old cover one as well, because I will recommend that you read that as well. I mean, it's just thoroughly enjoyable, because one of the reasons we decided to do this and look at short stories is because I think short stories are the future of publishing in a way, because they give you that one hit, don't they? Who was it who said that? Was it Edgar Allan Poe who said about reading something in one sitting?
Yes. The unity of impression Poe was talking about there.
Yeah.
That if you read it in one section. But also Hitchcock had said something very similar about how a film should be the same length as the capacity of the human bladder. And yeah, it's what you need, really, isn't it? I think Stephen King compares the difference between short stories and novels as a short story is like an affair, whereas a novel is like a marriage. And yeah, it's like that gratifying, as you say, that gratifying hit of, this is all that there is.
Yeah, it does that. And like I say, going back to this one, because I think we've laminated over what we thought was brilliant and how it was entertaining and all that kind of stuff. But from a creative point of view, how would you have gone about writing this particular one? I mean, the idea is, obviously the idea is the door won't stay shut, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think if it had been me, I would have started in a completely different place. She did such a great job of sort of like introducing us to the character. And we've got that sort of like suggestion in the first page that there's a door somewhere that won't shut. But she builds on the character, which is very, very impressive. The whole notion of the door is just a case of, it's coming, we'll get to that. And again, that's part of the mastery of her storytelling abilities. The fact that she knows that her audience are going to be there thinking, well, all right, I'll read a little bit more about this character, but I want my fucking door that won't shut or won't open or whichever.
So how much of that do you think's the title?
The open door? Quite possibly a lot of it, yeah.
Because I was just thinking that, because I hadn't thought about it whilst listening to it and reading it. But just thinking about it now, because we've been comparing it to Elizabeth Gaskell. And I'm wondering how much of the start of this one, starting with the title, The Open Door, going into the fact that it's an open, there's a door that won't close, and creating that little bit of mystery. I suppose nowadays they call it clickbaiting. And enough that you're going to continue reading and you're going to buy into the character because you know that something is coming. Where with Elizabeth Gaskell's The Old Nurse's Story doesn't mean anything as a title. So when it starts, you are kind of going, oh, come on, where's this going? Oh, come on, let's get on with it. Where if it actually was kind of like called, the
dodgy organ,
the old unplayable organ, or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Old man's organ. But if you actually had something ghostly in the title and in the opening frame, because even in the opening paragraph, she just goes, oh, no, do you know where your mother came from? Rather than, shall we tell you a story about a ghost that sort of came through? It misses that kind of foregrounding, doesn't it? Where this one actually, like you just said there, it comes in 100 mile an hour with the foreground and goes, bang, this is a story about a door that doesn't shut. There's a mystery here. Now let's take a look at the players within that mystery.
Yeah, and just sort of like leaves that mystery on the back burner, where it's sort of like simmering away in your imagination, and you've got sort of like no way of getting to it till you sort of like found out more about these people and you're more invested in all that's going on. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant setup.
Yeah. I think that's a really important thing to take, actually, the title and that initial setup. So you are telling your reader, particularly in a short story, that you're telling your reader very, very quickly that they are in a spooky tale and then you can then start doing all the realism and all the slow build up and stuff like that, because you've already created the anticipation.
I suppose, could this whole story have been sort of like a non-issue if the owner of the house had just changed the locks on that particular door? Because the reason why it keeps opening is they've not got a key for the lock, have they?
Oh, that's it. I mean, and that turns out to be where the maid's hiding out in the house, I think. Because that's the old maid's room. Yeah, I mean, like you say, if you start pulling it apart, you could quite easily go, well, yeah, I mean, this is the classic thing about haunted house stories, isn't it? Where you've got to build your reason for being in the house so strong. Otherwise, you do the kind of, as soon as spooky stuff goes, you go, fuck it, I'm gone, I'm out.
Yeah,
I'll leave. And that's kind of what's happened with this house as well, when you think about it, because this guy's rented it off this lord, and then can't sublet it to anyone because everyone's walking in, the door won't shut. They go, right, I'm done, I'm off, and they go.
Yeah.
So yeah, could it have been? Yeah, just take the door off the hinges. That would have just don't have a door. That would have solved.
Yeah, I've one of those bead curtains from the 70s. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but can you imagine? It would then become like the rattling beads or something like that. For no reason at all. The beads just wish and let all the flies in.
Yeah, that's even greater horror story than. Yeah, I mean, there would have been so many different ways around that, and as you say, there are with horror stories. You can start pulling holes in them and finding ways around them. But no, I'm still not going to piss on it because this one just absolutely worked for me.
No,
it was,
absolutely. It's at some point, I think when we've done a number of them, we might try and put certain things in an order of how much we enjoyed them. Like our own little chart. Of which I don't like to preempt anything, but Charles Dickens' The Signal Man is right at the fucking bottom of that one. No doubt
definitely. Yeah.
Hovering
slightly
below
there,
now, we've got some really good contenders. I think this is definitely on par with how much I enjoyed Pigeons from Hell.
Yeah.
And how much I enjoyed Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde was absolutely brilliant. Yeah. I'm hoping Robert Louis Stevenson doesn't let us down with the Body Snatcher.
Yes, right. Well, we shall find out next week on that one. Ash?
So, 5 books to give away, 5 books to give away. Hit the subscribe, like button, do whatever you need. If you want one of those books, and if you don't, in that case, you're clearly stupid. But yeah, if you want one of those books, in that case, yeah, Colin's website.
Can I just say that the actual link itself, if you decide that you don't want to say, like you've already got a copy of it, and you think, oh, but the link you can send on to someone else, it's not name specific. So if I send you a copy of the link and you decide to bounce that onto someone else, they will be able to download from it. It is a voucher code that anybody can use, but they can only use it once. Once it's used, it then dies at that point. But so if you want to win it for somebody else, do that.
Yeah, that could be somebody's Christmas present.
Yes, because actually, now you mention it, that could get me out of a lot of problems this Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make up some story titles and throw them through to you. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go off and try and imagine what that first letter from the intended was all about. Because I think that's.
Yes, I think Patty was sort of like, I reckon she'd put a pair of used knickers in there, hadn't she? Yeah.
Must have. She must have described something above her ankles. That's all I can say.
Yeah. No, it was. It's at the start of Frank Skinner's autobiography, where he's talking about sexting, and he says, the first time he'd actually ever encountered the notion of sexting was when he got this message off a girl that he was seeing. And he said it was incredibly arousing. He said it was 2 parts Jackie Collins and 4 parts Grey's Anatomy. And he said it was just, he was sat there. And this had all come about because he'd sort of like said to her, what's in your knickers? So he'd got this whole description back. So she'd sort of like sent this description through to him and then said, so what's in your underpants? And he said, well, at the moment, my ankles, which...
Yeah.
And again, that was in the opening pages of that autobiography, and I just thought, I've got to read the rest of this because,
it's the hook, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good, a decent hook. Really sort of pulls it in. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that, Ash. I've loved it.
Thank you, mate.
Smash the subscribe, smash the like, share it all over the place, because we're just loving this too much.
Damn right.
See you now.
Laters.
Bye.